Hi guys. So this is going to be part one of the organelles, and I know you've learned the organelles before in middle school, but it's been eons, so we need to go through these little guys again. And what I like to do is break down what they do in as few words as possible because it makes it easier to remember. So we need to know what the organelles are, where to find them in the cell, and what they do. So we're going to start with the middle of the cell, which is the nucleus. All right, so with the nucleus, we have these little green arrows that I'm going to attempt to, there we go, click on them and point it right at the nucleus. So the nucleus is this little center part here, the big circle, not that teeny tiny little circle in there. The bigger circle is your nucleus, okay? And what the nucleus does is it contains our genetic material. That's its job, is to hold the DNA in there and protect it. And so that is what goes in your parentheses. Our genetic material is DNA. Right? And only some cells have a nucleus. So remember, eukaryotic. So if you're a eukaryotic cell, which is everything that's not bacteria, including plants and animals, you have a nucleus that holds your DNA because you are large, complex cells, all right? And bacteria are these puny little things that don't use that. So animal cells, which is this one on the left, and plant cells, which is this one on the right, looking at your screen, both have a nucleus. So what a nucleus does is it controls all of the activities of the cell. All right? It controls everything. Think of it like the brain of the cell, okay? It's going to control what's going on because the directions are in there, the DNA, which is our directions. Okay, so you should have done the same thing on your sheet. Follow along with me. All right, we're going to scroll down now to the nucleolus. Remember, just like nucleic acids, all the nuke stuff stays together. So the nucleic acid is in the nucleus, and the nucleolus is in the nucleus. And the nucleolus is that tiny, tiny little dot inside the nucleus. I'm going to put an arrow right on there. It's going to make its own little dot. And right on this little guy, there we go. Okay, so that's our nucleolus. And what the nucleolus does is it makes another organelle. It makes an organelle called a ribosome. And at this point, you're like, Miss E, what's a ribosome? We'll learn in a little bit, okay? But it makes the ribosomes, and that's as simple of a definition as we can get for our nucleolus. So let's scroll down. We have this word chromatin, and you may have heard of chromosomes before. Chromatin is the fancy word for loose DNA. Okay, so we're going to take our arrows, and our DNA, remember from earlier, is found in the nucleus. So this little squiggle there that I added is supposed to be my DNA, and it's loose and stringy. Even prokaryotic cells, this one right here that looks hairy, that's my prokaryotic cell, it's bacteria. Even they have DNA, it's just not packaged in a nucleus like in these other cells. And so it's also this stringy stuff inside the nucleus of the plant cell. All right, so what it is DNA loose. I don't know, it should be the other way around, loose DNA. Let's fix that. Cut and paste. Loose DNA, there we go. Loose, stringy DNA is called chromatin. When it coils up and it's condensed, it's then called a chromosome. And it takes that form when you have to take it out of the nucleus and move it around because it keeps it from breaking. Because your DNA is super long and stringy, and if you were pulling it around when it was loose like this, it could break, and then you're mutated, and you could die. So, you don't want that to happen. Chromatin. On to the next one. So here we have the nuclear membrane or envelope. So they call it both ways, nuclear membrane or envelope. But remember, all the nuke stuff goes together. So the nuclear membrane surrounds the nucleus. So that's that little line around the nucleus. So you have to have a nucleus to have it. So it's only found in eukaryotic cells. There it is right there. And it has an important job. It's a barrier. So what it does is it controls what enters and leaves the cell. Okay? And if I typo in here, just expect it. Okay? There's a big word for that, and it's called semi-permeable. To permeate means to go through something. So to be semi-permeable means some things can go through, and that's what we see with this. It lets some things in and not other things. It's controlling what enters and leaves. Some things you want in your cell, like you want to let oxygen into your cell, and you want to let nucleotides into your nucleus, right? Because that's where the DNA is found. But you don't necessarily want any of that toxic stuff getting in there, and that's what this controls. All right, then going out from the nucleus, the first thing next to the nucleus is rough ER. And it's rough because it looks like it's rough. It has little dots all over it. So you can see this stuff right here with the little dots all over it, and there's a little chunk of it over there. And on our plant cell, it's over here. And it's always, all the ERs are right next to the nucleus, and they're just these folded membranes. This one's rough because it has ribosomes all over it. So what its job is it actually manufactures proteins. So remember how important proteins are to our body, and it ships them. And you might say, well, them is already there. Where is it shipping it to? It ships it to another organelle that we'll talk about in a little bit. All right, manufactures and ships them. And it's covered in, there's that organelle again that the nucleolus made, ribosomes. All right, covered in ribosomes. That's what makes it rough. And then the alternate to that is we have smooth ER. So smooth ER looks just like rough ER, but without dots. So in our animal cell, it's right here. See how it's nice and smooth. All right, and in our plant cell, right there, always next to the nucleus, which is important because if you look at this stuff over here in the corner, it looks a lot like it, but it's not next to the nucleus, so it's not smooth ER. Smooth ER does a lot of stuff. All right, so it is responsible for lipid synthesis, so it makes fats, in particular the ones that make your hormones, like steroids. Natural steroids, not the kind that shrinks your junk, guys. Natural steroids are in your body, okay? It processes a variety of metabolic processes. That's redundant. It regulates your calcium, which is really important, especially as you get older, and it removes toxins. That's a very important job, all right? So that's the number one, I think, most important job here. These things are also important, but this one is the big one because it's the only thing that this one does that the other ones don't. Removing those toxins is very important. All right, so moving on from there, there's an organelle that we've seen a couple times already, ribosomes, made by the nucleolus, found on the rough ER, and it's also found floating loose, willy-nilly, and here's a little cluster right here, so I'm just going to put it like right in front of that little cluster. Little cluster there. Here's a little cluster floating around willy-nilly in my plant cell. And even prokaryotic cells have ribosomes. So ribosomes are not made out of folded membranes like a lot of our other organelles are. That distinguishes them from the other ones. But they have that super important job of protein synthesis. They make the proteins, and that's really, really important because remember, the bulk of your body is made out of proteins. Your enzymes are proteins. We got to have a lot of protein. All right, so that's the ribosomes. We got to know that guy. And so earlier, when we looked at the rough ER, I said that it ships those proteins, and where it ships it to is this guy, the Golgi. Sometimes it's called Golgi body. Sometimes it's called Golgi apparatus. If you just know it as Golgi, you'll be golden, okay? So Golgi looks like the smooth ER, but is not found next to the nucleus. I also think sometimes it looks like the Wi-Fi sign on your phone. So like this guy right here kind of looks like the Wi-Fi sign on your phone. Over here, these ones are kind of wonky, but here's one right there in this guy, and there's another one over there of your Golgi found in your cells. All right, the Golgi packages proteins. All right, so the proteins that are made by the ribosomes and shipped by the rough ER go to the Golgi, which packages them up in little bubbles called vesicles and ships them out of the cell so you can make new parts of your body out of them, okay? So it's going to package those proteins. And they kind of look like, to me, like pita pockets, if you know what those are, those little breads that you stuff like chicken salad in, and then you eat it up. So you can think of it that way because it packages proteins. All right, then we got the mighty mitochondria. Mitochondria look like little pill-shaped guys with squiggles in them. And I think of the squiggles as cursive M's, like it looks like a cursive up and down M for mitochondria. And so we have lots of these. We got multiple, okay? So here's one, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the animal cell. And we got 1, 2, not that one. 1, 2, 3, 4 in the plant cell. So these guys are the site of cellular respiration. That's how we get our energy. All right, and by doing this, which is ATP is the chemical name for energy. We'll be talking about that more later. ATP is created, which is used for energy by the cell. It is the powerhouse, which in middle school is probably how you learned it. The powerhouse of the cell, mighty mitochondria. So these are really important. If you're an athlete and you're very active, in your cells there will be more mitochondria than a couch potato like me. And that's because your cells are required to make more energy to keep you active. And so you will divide your mitochondria and make more of them if you are an active person, which is kind of cool. So you can tell just at cellular level if somebody's very active or not. All right, here we are on vacuole. I personally really like vacuoles because I think of a vacuum that they hold a lot of stuff. They hold excess water, food, and waste. So we'll go in there and get that. Water, food, and waste. All right, kind of like a kitchen. It holds all that stuff. In animal cells, we tend to have multiple of them, but they're very small. So there's one, there's another one over here, there's another one over there. Plants have a huge vacuole. It's usually really easy. That's this big, huge thing in the middle. Really easy to find in plant cells because plants have to store water. They store water for two reasons. Well, many reasons, but two main reasons. One is it helps the plant stay rigid and upright. Like if you don't water your plant, it wilts, right? And that has a lot to do with the vacuole being filled up or not, like a water balloon. It also needs to store that water so the plant can do photosynthesis and make its own energy. So plants have a large vacuole, all right, sets it apart a little bit from the animal cell. Okay, now we're down to lysosomes. Now lysosomes, you can tell, only found in animal cells. We're the only ones that have this, and it makes sense once you realize what it does. The lysosome is this little circle dotty guy, okay? What it does, it can, okay. It has enzymes in it that can break down macromolecules in the cell using hydrolysis. Let's add, ooh, we need a space there. Okay, let's add to this. I like to add to this that it digests. All right. It digests old cell parts, food, and stuff like that. So if you think about animals, we eat things, right? And all those macromolecules have to go somewhere. They land up in the lysosomes, which use enzymes to help speed up chemical reactions and break down that food. Plants don't need this as much because plants don't eat things, or at least most plants. There's always exceptions, carnivorous plants. But and they have enzymes, but they're not packaged nicely in a lysosome like ours is. So when I think of a lysosome, it looks like a chocolate chip cookie. So I say you eat the chocolate chip cookie, you digest the chocolate chip cookie. Lysosomes. You can also think of it as like Lysol that you spray it on like the coronavirus and it breaks it down. All right. Next one is chloroplasts, which you probably remember. Chloroplasts are found only in plant cells because they are green. This is the green part of plant cells. Right there is a chloroplast. They usually look like they have little stacks of coins in there. So I think coins, money's green, photosynthesis, chloroplast, okay? It's a stretch, but that's what I got for you. So little stacks of coins, different than the squiggle that looks like an M. So this is the site of photosynthesis, okay? A process in which the plant uses carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight to create sugar, all right? In the form of glucose. We learned about glucose as our monomer of a carbohydrate. So plants make that for us. It's quite handy. All right. We're going to run out of time here. So I'm going to stop this video here and do a second short video to help you guys with the rest of these organelles. Bye-bye.